Hey, how's it going? My name is Wes. Welcome back to another lesson. In today's lesson, we will look at another yellow lesson, but instead of learning a new verb in the yellow lessons, we are actually going to look at a different topic. And the topic of today's lesson is omitting subject pronouns. Alright, so now I might hear you say, Wes, what does omitting subject pronouns even mean? And honestly, that's a very good question. When I first saw this sentence, like omitting subject pronouns, I was like, what in the world is this? So pretty much omitting is just a fancy word that means to leave out. So basically we're saying leaving out subject pronouns. And subject pronouns are actually something that we already went over in one of the previous lessons. I think it must have been about 10 lessons ago that we went over the subject pronouns. And we saw that there's two different types of subject pronouns. There's the subject pronouns that are used in Spain and the subject pronouns that are used in Latin America. And so we learned that a subject pronoun is pretty much a word that describes a person. So for example, I is the English subject pronoun, and the Spanish subject pronoun for I, the translation, is yo. Or you, informal, is tú. Or we is nosotros or nosotras, depending on if the we is a masculine or mixed group or a female group. So those are subject pronouns. Now in today's lesson, we are going to look at omitting subject pronouns. So omitting means to leave out. So leaving out subject pronouns. So we're going to look at the subject pronouns, but we're going to learn that we don't always need to use them and that we can leave them out of the sentence. Alright, and then as another example, we also learned to build sentences using these subject pronouns together with the matching conjugation of a verb. So if you look at the verb querer, which is to want, then when we say I want, we say
Yo quiero. Yo quiero.
When we say you want, we say
Tú quieres. Tú quieres.
and so on and so on. So for example, if we say I want the pizza, we say
Yo quiero la pizza. Yo quiero la pizza.
or when we want to say you want the pizza, we say
Tú quieres la pizza. Tú quieres la pizza.
or as the last example, when we say he wants the pizza,
Él quiere la pizza. Él quiere la pizza.
he wants the pizza. So pretty much anytime we want to form a sentence, we can use these subject pronouns to indicate who it is that we are talking about. So when I say yo quiero el bocadillo, then I'm saying I want the sandwich. Or for example, ella quiere el café, which means she wants the coffee. So we use these subject pronouns to indicate who it is that we are talking about. So yo, tú, él, nosotros, and so forth. Now, the title of today's lesson is omitting subject pronouns, so leaving out subject pronouns. And so in this lesson, we will learn that we don't always have to use the subject pronouns to form a sentence. So I don't have to say yo quiero el bocadillo. I can also say quiero el bocadillo. And this is because the verb, in a way, already tells us who it is that we are talking about. Because when I say quiero, that word quiero, because it ends with an O, kind of already indicates that I'm talking about myself. So I want. And for example, when I say quieres, then I'm talking about you, informal. Or instead of saying ella quiere el café, I can just say quiere el café, which still means she wants the coffee, but I don't need to put in that word ella to have you understand who I'm talking about. So as an example, instead of all of these sentences in which we use the subject pronouns, we can also write them differently, and we can just omit or leave out the subject pronouns, and then these sentences turn into these sentences. And these sentences still mean the same thing, but we're just not using the subject pronouns in these sentences. Now, at first, when you're not used to leaving out the subject pronouns, because in English we don't do this, it might seem a bit weird or maybe wrong to write the sentences this way. But this is actually a very common and kind of expected way of creating sentences in Spanish. In Spanish, we actually don't really use the subject pronouns. So even though we've been learning them and studying them, we don't really need them. Alright, so I want to zoom in a little bit on an example sentence to see exactly what is happening. So in this example, we have you want the pizza.
Tú quieres la pizza. Tú quieres la pizza.
So again, the subject pronoun here is tú. So you is tú. So tú quieres la pizza, you want the pizza. However, we don't really need this tú, and we can just omit it or leave it out. So we can get rid of this tú, and instead of saying
Tú quieres la pizza.
we can say
¿Quieres la pizza? ¿Quieres la pizza?
you want the pizza. Because quieres already tells us that we are talking about tú. Because if I would be talking about I want the pizza, then I would say yo quiero. So I would not write quieres. Or when I say we want the pizza, I would say nosotros queremos la pizza. And not nosotros quieres la pizza. So if I say quieres la pizza, it always means that I'm talking about you in the informal way. So quieres la pizza, you want the pizza. Let's look at one more example.
Nosotros queremos las pizzas. Nosotros queremos las pizzas.
We want the pizzas. So because we're saying queremos, it automatically means that we are talking about we. If I would say I want the pizzas, we would say yo quiero las pizzas. So not queremos, but quiero. So again, we can leave out nosotros because queremos already tells us that we are talking about we. So instead of saying
Nosotros queremos las pizzas.
we say
Queremos las pizzas.
we want the pizzas. So this subject pronoun nosotros becomes unnecessary to use.
Queremos las pizzas.
Alright, one more example. He wants the sandwich.
Él quiere el bocadillo. Él quiere el bocadillo.
Now again, we don't need el because quiere already tells us that we are talking about he. Now this is where we actually run into a problem because quiere is not only the conjugation for he, for el. It's also the conjugation for ella or usted. So she or you formal. And so sometimes it might be better to include the subject pronoun because it might be unclear whoever we are talking to. However, usually if you're in a conversation, the person that you're talking to or the conversation that you're having automatically shows or tells the person that you're talking about. So if you're pointing to someone and you're saying, he wants a sandwich,
Quiere el bocadillo.
then you don't need to use el quiere el bocadillo, then you can just say quiere el bocadillo.
Quiere el bocadillo.
Because you're pointing to the person that you're talking about. And the person that you're talking to knows who it is that you're talking about. So if it is él or ella or usted. So in most cases, we can get rid of this el, quiere el bocadillo, and we can just make it quiere el bocadillo. Now sometimes it might not really be clear who you're talking about. And in those cases, you can put the stress on the subject pronoun. So you can include it. So for example, ella quiere el bocadillo, pero él no quiere el bocadillo. So she wants a sandwich, but he doesn't want the sandwich. But in most cases, it is actually expected from you to omit or leave out the subject pronoun. And that's pretty much everything that I wanted to explain in this video. And so from now on, instead of including the subject pronouns, we're also going to practice with the example sentences and so forth to try and leave out these subject pronouns. The only time I will include the subject pronouns is when we go into other verb lessons, because this will help you learn those verbs and the correct conjugation together with the subject pronoun. Alright, so that's it about this lesson of omitting subject pronouns or leaving out subject pronouns. It's a very common thing in Spanish. You will see it happening a lot, both when you write and speak in Spanish. And it's something that we as non-native Spanish speakers are not used to. In the English language, for example, this doesn't happen. We always say he wants the sandwich. We never say wants the sandwich because it doesn't make sense. But in Spanish, this is a very common thing. So from now on, we will keep practicing with this. And for now, if you have any more questions about this topic, then please feel free to let me know. Also, as always, you can find all of the information that we went over in today's lesson on my website, which is SpanishWithWes.com. As always, there's a link in the description which will take you to the right page. And that's it for this lesson. Lesson number 20 is finished already. In the next lesson, we will actually have a very important lesson in which we will dive into the question words in Spanish. So I'm very excited to share those with you. Alright, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know. And I would like to see you in the next one. Adios.